Well, everyone, the iPhone 14 Pro is one of those iPhones that's been out for a little bit of time now. It hasn't been an insane amount of time or anything like that, but about almost 2 years turning this year. And it's so crazy because looking back, this was a very good iPhone. This was one of the first iPhones in a couple of years where I actually didn't switch over. So I used my iPhone 13 Pro for like 2 years straight, over 2 years to be honest. And then the 14 Pro came out. I didn't really feel like it was a massive upgrade, but looking back, it was actually kind of a pretty decent upgrade, and maybe I should have switched, I don't know. But I had a great time with my 13 Pro. And with the 14 Pro, now that it's a little bit over a year old now, there's a couple of things that changed. It got its new version of software, it's gotten its successor, and these things have gone down in the used market a little bit. So we'll talk about that throughout this video, whether this phone is still worth buying. But if you want to pick up this phone or some other phones, I would recommend buying throughout the remainder of this video. Links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPhone 14 Pro, this is easily by far one of the biggest advantages of this particular phone is the exterior. It just looks so beautiful. Now on the front, you are basically getting this 6.1-inch LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display. A very good panel. There's some big highlights here. For one, fairly high resolution, 1180p basically. You're getting 120Hz display as well, the second generation of iPhones to bring that 120Hz. But the biggest thing here, and probably not the most controversial thing, but a big change here, was the dynamic island. This was one of the first times we've seen Apple even change anything with the front display in a very long amount of time, and this was a very good change. Looking back, I think it was a small change, and even with my 15 Pro that I'm using, it's not even that big of a deal, but it was something new at the time, and I think that was actually something that was very, very cool. Now, I don't think it warranted you to upgrade from the 13 Pro to the 14 Pro, and if you even had a 12 Pro, I don't even think if I would go and upgrade from that perspective, to be honest, but it was still a very big change that I was very happy about, and at least they were making some changes. I think with the 16s, they're probably going to make even more changes, to be honest, but it's a very good looking phone from that perspective, and definitely the front, even the 2000 nits of brightness that this phone is giving you is actually pretty insane as well. Now, on the sides of this phone, it's flat-sided, so it's just like reflective material, but you may not know this. This was one of the last iPhones with that reflective material around it. Apple has now removed that on the iPhone 15s, which I'm not really that happy about, but whatever, it's whatever. What are we going to do at this point? You do have a lightning port in this iPhone, which is funny because this will basically the last iPhone with a lightning port. I don't think all the other future iPhones will bring lightning back, even if Apple makes another iPhone SE. I genuinely do think Apple's probably going to put USB-C in it. So that is that. Lightning is a wrap, and this was the last iPhone to bring a lightning port, which is pretty crazy in and of itself. Could you imagine that? Just talking to yourself like 10, 15 years ago and being like, lightning is going to be changed with USB-C. Even 2 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought they went portless before they brought USB-C. So I'm very, very happy that they actually ended up bringing that. That, once again, in and of itself is another very kind of not change, but a last reminder of this particular phone from that perspective. On the backside, you're getting this frosted glass back, which looks and feels very good. I'm a massive fan of the way this phone feels. You have that triple camera setup on the backside, LiDAR sensor, MagSafe capability, wireless charging, IP certification. There's still a lot of good stuff that this phone still holds up very, very well in, which I'm very happy about. And without a doubt, as I've said before, I'm a big fan of the iPhone 14 Pro and definitely looking forward to the future of this phone without a doubt. Now, the pricing strategy of this phone right now is kind of interesting because now that we have the iPhone 15 Pros at $1,000, these phones have gone down in value quite a bit. So if you basically go in the used market, you can probably find them anywhere from like $650 to $750, maybe even cheaper than that. Really just depends on the condition. And if you're watching this a couple months from now, they're probably even cheaper than that. So that's actually a pretty big thing to keep in mind here. Is if you're buying a phone like the iPhone 14 Pro, you're going to be getting a device that isn't as expensive as it used to be. And that's a pretty big advantage for this particular phone, which makes me feel very comfortable and happy when I'm buying a phone that like this and I'll basically recommending it to people. It doesn't really cost as much as it used to be, which is a really big advantage right there. So definitely gets a thumbs up for me from the pricing point. In terms of the camera, very, very good camera on this phone. So I didn't think it was that big of a change from the iPhone 13 Pro, and it really wasn't, but it did bring some cool things here and there. So you're getting that 48 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, then an ultra wide camera as well, and then a wide angle 12 megapixel sensor as well. 4K at 60 on the front and the back, and overall a pretty good camera. I think this was a very solid lens even when it first came out, but even now that it's been out for a little bit of time, it's gotten some time to improve and everything, it's a very good camera. It had that one issue when it first came out, which it was basically like rattling the camera like crazy when you were actually taking a photo, and Snapchat and Instagram and stuff. Very weird. I don't know why that even happened in the first place, but Apple was kind of quick to fix it. I was really happy about. So that's like another thumbs up for me. This camera is very good. And even when I compare it to the iPhone 14 Pro, or 15 Pro, it's not even that big of a difference, and I don't even think it's that big of a difference from the 13 Pro, to be honest. But when you do get in things like cinematic mode and other areas, you can definitely tell there's like some finer details and finer things, like some features here and there that the older iPhones didn't have that the newer ones do. So that is one thing to keep in mind. But I do think if you have a phone like the iPhone, 13 Pro, the cameras are very similar. I think the 15 Pro is slightly better, but it's still very similar. Like those 3 generations, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, to be honest, unless you're going into like cinematic mode or you're zooming in and zooming out of a photo. Maybe then you can tell, but beyond that, very good phone for the most part on the front of this thing. In terms of the software of this particular phone, as I've said before for so many years, these phones last for a very long amount of time. So you can buy the iPhone 14 Pro like today, and it's still going to be a phone that's going to be supportive for so many years to come. And that is easily by far one of my most favorite things going on for this particular phone, that you don't have to go ahead and just buy the latest and greatest generation. You can buy even the 14 Pro and still get a very long lasting phone. Now, it's tough to say how much longer this phone is going to last. If I had to kind of guess, this phone's probably it will probably end up giving us like another like 5 years of software and security updates. So that's kind of like a big thing to keep in mind. But I'll tell you, I love the iPhone 14 Pro. I think it's a very good performing phone from the software side, but this also does directly lead us to the performance side. And this phone's performance is very good. It's a very good performing phone, and that's something, once again, that I love about these particular devices. It has that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it, and you're also getting 6 gigabytes of RAM inside of this phone as well. This phone is probably one of the better performing devices you can buy, even from, in the brand new phone market. The thing with these chipsets is that they're so optimized for their software, because Apple makes the chipset in the software. So you're basically getting just such a solid performing device all across the board, and it's fluid, it's fast, and that's why I was still able to use a phone like the 13 Pro and complain about nothing. I had very few complaints about my 13 Pro, and the 14 Pro is a better phone than that. It's slightly better in performance, it's slightly better in basically everything across the board. So you're going to be getting a better phone overall in something like the iPhone 14 Pro over something like the iPhone 13 Pro, and it's going to be very similar to the 15 Pro. So I will tell you from that perspective, the performance of the iPhone 14 Pro is still very good. No matter what you do with it, you're going to be getting a very solid device all across the board, from the performance factor, from the software factor, camera, everything. So where does this kind of leave us with the 14 Pro right now? I will tell you without a doubt, the iPhone 14 Pro is easily still one of the best phones I could recommend the average person. It's such a good phone. I think it's probably more than enough for a lot of people, to be completely honest. And this is a device that I look at and I couldn't recommend this phone enough. It's such a good phone, and if you're in the market, it's kind of a no-brainer. The only reason or the only way I would recommend not buying this phone is if you want to save some money. You can always buy a 13 Pro. I'd probably recommend that maybe more so than the 14 Pro for, a lot of people if you want to save some money. Or if you have all the money in the world, then you should just go and buy the iPhone 15 Pro. Like, why not just spend more money and just get the best phone you can buy right now? So that's also another thing. But beyond that, I love the 14 Pro. I think it's completely worth buying for sure. And this is one of the phones that I look at as probably being one of the best phones Apple's made. It's just so similar to the 13 Pro and 15 Pro, like just kind of, mix and match which one you want. But very good phone. Definitely gets a thumbs up for me without a doubt. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.